Hello everyone, thanks for joining me on this video. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at comedy shows. So reselling comedy tickets is a little bit different than selling concerts or sports. There are some additional factors that you need to take into account. And I'm going to go over some of those main important tips in this video. So when it comes to reselling comedy, it hinges on two key factors: the popularity of the performer and the appropriateness of the venue size. So typically comedians start out in small comedy clubs, generally building a following. For example, let's take a look at Matt Rife, who has recently garnered a huge amount of popularity. You might have heard that he was, selling out fairly large venues and doing really well. So initially, he sold out in smaller venues, commanding astronomical prices. So people were willing to pay a huge margin for those tickets. He was sort of the hype of the town. As he gained his immense popularity across social media, on Twitter, Instagram, across the board, he started to perform in mid-sized venues such as Radio City, Music Hall, and the Hard Rock Live. Consequently, his resale market remains pretty strong still, even though he's performing in slightly larger venues. In addition to the performer popularity and venue size, some other key factors that play into it is timing. The timing of the performance, especially for particular artists, really values. For example, weekend shows and generally earlier time slots are going to do better. Most comedians, when they perform, they will come to a city and they'll perform 1 day or 2 days. And generally they will have a 7 o'clock or a 9 o'clock. So they'll do multiple shows in one night, because a comedian generally has anywhere from, 45 to an hour and a half on the long end of their skit. Comedian's not going to be performing for 3-4 hours like maybe a music artist who has openers. Although comedians will have openers, generally the main performer will be for about an hour. So generally the 7 p.m. show tends to perform a little bit better than the 10 p.m. show. It is also important noting that occasionally perform in venues that may not be the best fit for their audience size. So when big comedians, even like Dave Chappelle, opt to perform in arenas, the market can sometimes suffer due to the abundance of seats. So even though Dave Chappelle is a very well-known comedian, probably one of the greatest of all time, when you're performing for an arena, which is generally, reserved for, baseball or football, or these big events where there's, 40,000 people going, 60,000 people going, it can be hard for even some of these artists to sell out these venues, so that even really good seats, even if you get really good seats, some of those might perform well, but there's always just going to be so many more additional seats and seating available that it's never going to really sell out or lead to a huge increase in demand. So considering those factors, keep in mind, when you're targeting comedians, that it's really important to, know if they're performing in a venue that's essentially too large for them, if they're kind of overshooting how well they're likely going to do. But if you are able to ride on, critical news that's relevant to right now, sometimes you really can find artists like Matt Rife, like the Comedy Mothership from Joe Rogan, where there is currently just so much, interest around these venues that it can really perform very well. So being aware of their social media presence, and if they're transitioning from smaller to larger venues, can really help you gauge profitability. And it's also essential to know which artist or which comedian you're targeting to know if they're actually going to perform well. So that's a little bit about comedians and how they perform. More of this stuff is covered in our members course. And of course, if we do find opportunities when it comes to comedians performing in a relatively, comparable or smaller sized venue for how currently popular they might be, obviously we send those to our members in our market predictions channel as well. So thanks for watching this video. Hope you guys found a little bit of useful information when it comes to reselling comedy tickets.